Swaminidhi Namine.
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine.
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prajarine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine.
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Jai Harinam Sankirtan ki, Jai Shri Prabhupada ki, Jai.
Jai.
Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratushe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhano Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna. Okay, so should we begin with questions?
Yes, Prabhuji, you can begin with questions. I'll post the questions. I've posted a few questions, Prabhuji.
Why are the divisions divided into directions and not merely segments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Shall I elaborate on this question, please?
Okay, good.
Prabhu, generally directions are associated with opposite tendencies, like we say now that
Directions associated with?
opposite tendencies, Prabhu. Like when we say your thoughts are going east and west. So
See, I mean, you can't compare that sort of mundane things to what the acharyas are speaking. So, so basically, there are four. In one sense, they're segments only, as you can see in the diagram. In one sense, they're segments only, but they're put four different directions. So, I mean, there's no need to get into too much analysis on, why north, south, east. Well, there are four segments, divisions, whatever you call.
Okay, Prabhu.
That's what it said. Grantha Vibhag. Vibhag means division, segment. So that's all. There's no need to get into it.
Okay. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
How the analogies mentioned here framed analogies to suit a particular explanation, or are these analogies? Which analogies?
Hare Krishna. The analogies of the rivers joining the ocean, whether these are analogies which are already mentioned in the Upanishads.
Yes, so these analogies are given by the acharyas. Prabhupada gives this analogy so many times. Rivers join the ocean.
or sometimes it is used by the Mayavadis to suit their own interpretation.
Yes, so Mayavadis give a wrong interpretation, but then our acharyas give the correct interpretation.
Yeah, Prabhu.
Mother Yashoda fulfills only one condition. Her intention is to please, but actually not please Krishna. How to understand that? See, Krishna getting angry at that point of time is also external. Internally, obviously, he knows everything, and he knows that Mother Yashoda wants to please him. He knows the milk is meant for him. He knows everything, but then if he didn't get angry, then how the Damodar Leela would have taken place? So that's all for the sake of Leela. Of course, internally, he knows everything. Is that okay?
Okay, Prabhu. Prabhu, should we then see that these things should only be understood through the acharyas and we cannot directly understand these things?
Yes, yes. Directly, one can speculate so many things. So therefore, one has to study through the acharyas. Gopis and Vrindavan on the highest platform devotional service, they also call out for protection. How can we understand this? They definitely are not on sadhaka level.
You had mentioned that.
Yes, I understand. So, so of course they are calling out, because again for them it's just natural. Any difficulty, any problem, they just love Krishna, so they call out Krishna's name. So again, it may not all see. Sometimes, like we hear of the Gopas going into Agarsu's mouth. So that time they were not afraid also. So and sometimes when there's some danger, they just very naturally call out to Krishna because they love Krishna. So that's all on the basis of love.
Okay, Prabhu. So that means like this calling out by Uttara and calling out by the gopis, they are completely different in the different platform.
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
Okay, the next one is the same question. There's a call out for help in devotees on prem platform don't call out. Yeah, so it's the same question. Artificial detachment. Okay, regarding artificial detachment, we'll discuss later on. That point comes up later on the chapter. Examples of Shivi Maharaj, Parikshit Maharaj, they pray to Lord for being friend of all.
This is in regard to that Giriraj Maharaj, this one you had mentioned too, like drowning man should be saved or not.
Yes. So of course, the Paradukha Dukhi is in general, it's not a specific situation. No? That is in general. In general, whether one is drowning or not drowning, everyone is suffering. Everyone is suffering in material existence. So that way, Vaishnava has natural compassion for all living entities because ultimately everyone is suffering. Now, this is a very specific situation that Giriraj Maharaj is talking about of somebody drowning. And so, yes, so Vaishnava definitely feels compassion for the drowning person. But at the same time, so if he's capable of saving, then yes, because he feels compassion, then he tries to save if he's capable of it. But the point is that the Vaishnava is not obliged. He's not obliged to save because that could just be karma. And so it's not obliged that the Vaishnava has to save. So, but then, yes, out of compassion, the Vaishnava may try to save if he's capable of doing that. But then again, the point is made that it's not that the Vaishnava thinks that I have to perform some material pious activities like that. Is it all right?
So basically, like he's not looking at as a service to the people in general. He's looking at as the living entity as part and parcel of the Lord, and so I may save. So,
Yes, yes, yes. That's good.
okay.
Yes, not like a material pious activity. When the normal activities of the day or office work are scheduled and done with an intention of doing chanting in the morning, probably do it. Okay, yes. If one is scheduling things to give priority to chanting, that's fine. What's wrong with that?
No, his question is that throughout the day, whatever he has done, will that be counted as devotional service, or his office work, which has been scheduled to adjust for chanting?
Will the office work be devotional service? Yes, if ultimately the office work is prescribed duty, if it's a prescribed duty to maintain body and soul together, to maintain family members as a grihastha, then that comes into prescribed duties. So that's if that is sanctioned by superior Vaishnavas, then yes, then that's all devotional service. What's the ultimate goal of going to the office? The ultimate goal is devotional service. So then it's all devotional service. For what are the fruits used? Everything is based on that. No, because the devotee is not obliged to save. He's not obliged to save the drowning man. So it's not that somebody is instructing him to save and then he does not save. If somebody is instructing him, he's capable and then does not save, then yes, then we could talk of reaction. But then just on one's own, then he's not obliged, because that could be just the karma of the person. But then, as we already discussed, so but the Vaishnava feels compassion. Yes, giving something to the man with weapons. It means that okay, you call the man to eat, he'll come with the weapons. So that's the point. So similarly, Krishna is never alone. He has his paraphernalia and he has everything else. Can't separate the two. Temporary does say Krishna, but not as well. Yes, we understand that yes, one is dependent on Krishna, but then again, it's natural for especially a sadhaka to ask the Lord for protection, because a sadhaka may think I'm not yet completely purified, and so therefore, if I can practice more devotional service with this body, then I can get more purified. And so ultimately the goal is to practice devotional service. And so therefore, even if he calls out to the Lord for protection, then that's not outside pure devotional service, because the mood is ultimately to serve Krishna. All right?
Thank you, Prabhuji.
All right. That's it, right?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, good. Fine, so we are starting the first chapter. The 6 characteristics of pure devotional service. Again, Prabhupada doesn't give the Sanskrit terms over here, though of course he has quoted many of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu verses in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And so therefore, sometimes we take references, we put the references of CC verses, but then many of these verses are quoted in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So this is the verse from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Kleshagni Shubhadha Moksha Lagutakrit Sudurlabha Sandrananda Visheshatma Sri Krishna Akarshani Chosa. So these are the 6 characteristics of pure devotional service. So first is Kleshagni. Pure devotional service brings immediate relief from all kinds of material distress. Shubhada, pure devotional service, is the beginning of all auspiciousness. Moksha Lagutakrit, those in pure devotional service derive even the conception of liberation. Sudurlabha, pure devotional service is rarely achieved. Sandran Visheshatma, pure devotional service automatically puts one in transcendent pleasure. And Sri Krishna Krishna, pure devotional service is the only means to attract Krishna. So these characteristics develop in accordance to the sages of Bhakti. So in Sadhana Bhakti, the first 2 characteristics develop, Kleshagni and Shubhada. In Bhava Bhakti, then 2 more are added, Moksha Lagutakrit and Sudurlabha. And in Prem Bhakti, then all 6 are manifest. So therefore, it's important to remember the order of these 6 characteristics because they are manifesting in that order. Okay. Same thing. So now we'll discuss in detail Kleshagni. Klesha means material suffering and Gni means destroys. So pure devotional service brings immediate relief from all kinds of material distress. So there are 3 causes of suffering. Kleshastu papam tad bijam avidya cheti tetridha. So 3 causes of suffering are avidya, ignorance is the root cause, which leads to material desires, that's the bijam. And then because of the material desires, there are sinful actions, that's the papam, and that causes suffering. The reaction of sinful activities comes in the form of suffering. So basically there are 3 causes of suffering, avidya, bijam, and papam. Ignorance. Okay, so let's read something from Prabhupada's book. Okay, this is page number 8, according to my book here. So this is the last paragraph of this topic of Kleshagni. So if somebody has found it, you can read. This tight knot of false ego is due to ignorance.
Yes, Prabhuji. Found it.
Okay, Nishant, Prabhu.
This tight knot of false ego is due to ignorance. As long as one is ignorant about his identity, he is sure to act wrongly and thereby become entangled in material contamination. This ignorance of factual knowledge can also be dissipated by Krishna consciousness, as is confirmed in the Padma Purana as follows. Pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness is the highest enlightenment. And when such enlightenment is there, it is just like a blazing forest fire, killing all the inauspicious snakes of desire. The example is being given in this connection that when there is a forest fire, the extensive blazing automatically kills all the snakes in the forest. There are many, many snakes on the ground of the forest, and when a fire takes place, it burns the dried foliage, and the snake is immediately attacked. Animals who have 4 legs can flee from the fire and can at least try to flee, but the snakes are immediately killed. Similarly, the blazing fire of Krishna consciousness is so strong that the snakes of ignorance are immediately killed.
Yes. So the root cause of material desires is ignorance. As Prabhupada says here, as long as one is ignorant about his identity, he's sure to act wrongly and thereby becomes entangled in material contamination. So as we know that our identity is Jiva Swarupa Krishna Nitya Das. Our identity is that we are simply servants of the Supreme Lord. But when we come into this material world, we are put into ignorance of this identity. This ignorance is facilitated by Brahmaji and Lord Shiva and the material energy Parvati. So all of them, they facilitate the covering of the pure living entity with ignorance. Why? Because that's what the living entity desired. So the living entity desired to enjoy separate from Krishna. So when the jiva desires to enjoy separate from Krishna, so then immediately he comes under the influence of the material energy, and so the material energy covers him with ignorance. So that verse is that Jeev bhoga vancha kare nikatastha maya tare jhapatiya dhare. So when the jiva desires to enjoy bhoga vancha, so then immediately maya, nikatastha maya. So maya is always there, material energy. It's the energy of the Supreme Lord. So then she immediately covers the living entity, captures the living entity and covers him. So that's called as the avaranatmika shakti, the covering potency. Because if the avidya is not there, the ignorance is not there, then the jiva cannot enjoy in this world. If I know that this house belongs to somebody else, I won't dare to barge into the house and do whatever I want. But it is only when I'm in ignorance, thinking that, no, nobody is there in the house, or nobody will do anything. So when I'm in that ignorance, then yes, then I just barge into the house and think of doing whatever I like. But if I'm aware that the house belongs to someone, if I trespass into the house and do something, I'll be caught, I'll be punished, then one won't do it. So similarly, this entire material existence belongs to the Lord. Everything belongs to the Lord. Everything is meant for the Lord's pleasure. So if I know that, then I cannot enjoy. But at the same time, the Lord doesn't interfere with the free will of the living entity, and He wants to allow the jiva to fulfill his desire at his own risk. And so therefore, in order to facilitate the desires of the jiva, it becomes essential for him to put under ignorance. And so therefore, he's put under ignorance of his identity. And then he develops all the material desires to enjoy this world, and that's how he commits sinful activities. But then, when one takes to devotional service, the blazing fire of Krishna consciousness is so strong that the snakes of ignorance are immediately killed. So a devotee cannot be in ignorance. The famous verse, Krishna Surisam Maya Andakar, Jaha Krishna Tahanahi Mayara Adhikar. So Krishna is like the sun, Maya is like darkness, and so where there is the sun, then there cannot be darkness. Similarly, where there's Krishna, there cannot be the darkness of ignorance. So a devotee therefore cannot be in ignorance. Or we can say to the degree he is Krishna conscious, to that degree he cannot be in ignorance. There's the famous Vedic aphorism which Srila Prabhupada did quote quite often. Yasmin vigyate, yasmin vigyate et vigyatam bhavati, something like that. So one who knows Krishna, he knows everything. Huh?
Sarvameva vijnatam bhavati.
Yes, sarvam eva vijnatam. So one who knows Krishna, he knows everything. He cannot be in ignorance. And also the famous verses from the Bhagavad Gita. Tesham satyuktanam bhajatam pritipurukam dadami buddhiyogam tam yenama upyadite. In the next verse, Tesham evanukam partam aham agyanajam tam nashyami atmabhavasto jnanadipena vasvata. So, because the Lord himself situated within the hearts, he lights the lamp of knowledge, the torchlight of knowledge. And so therefore the devotee cannot be in ignorance. And so therefore that ignorance is being compared to snakes, and the forest fire is compared to Krishna consciousness. So when there is Krishna consciousness, then the snakes of ignorance are immediately killed. There's this famous verse from the Bhagavatam, Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janyatyashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayad Ahetukam. By rendering devotional service to the personality of God Shri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the worlds. So by practicing devotional service, automatically one gets Gyan. So that's how the ignorance is destroyed by the practice of devotional service. So now the next cause of suffering is the bijam, the material desire seeds. Okay, so now we will read something from Prabhupada's book. Okay, so somebody can read this page number 6, the last paragraph in this connection. Shukdev Goswami.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Nilima Mataji.
In this connection, Sukadev Goswami speaks in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd chapter, verse 17, about the story of Ajamila, who began life as a fine and beautiful Brahmana, but in his young manhood became wholly corrupted by a prostitute. At the end of his wicked life, just by calling the name Narayana, Krishna, he was saved despite so much sin. Sukadev points out that austerity, charity, and performance of ritualistic ceremonies for counteracting sinful activities are recommended processes, but that by performing them, one cannot remove the sinful desired seed from the heart, as was the case with Ajamila in his youth. This sinful desired seed can be removed only by achieving Krishna consciousness, and this can be accomplished very easily by chanting the Mahamantra or Hare Krishna mantra as recommended by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In other words, unless one adopts the path of devotional service, he cannot be 100% clean from all the reactions of sinful activities. By performing Vedic ritualistic activities, by giving money in charity, and by undergoing austerity, one can temporarily become free from the reactions of sinful activities. But at the next moment, he must again become engaged in sinful activities. For example, a person suffering from venereal disease on account of excessive indulgence in sex life has to undergo some severe pain in medical treatment, and he is then cured for the time being. But because he has not been able to remove the sex desire from his heart, he must again indulge in the same thing and become a victim of the same disease. So medical treatment may give temporary relief from the distress of such venereal disease, but unless one is trained to understand that sex life is abominable, it is impossible to be saved from such repeated distress. Similarly, the ritualistic performances, charity and austerity, which are recommended in the Vedas, may temporarily stop one from acting in sinful ways, but as long as the heart is not clear, one will have to repeat the sinful activities again and again. Another example given in Srimad Bhagavatam concerns the elephant who enters into a lake and takes a bath very seriously, cleansing his body thoroughly. Then, as soon as he comes onto the shore, he again makes some dust from the earth and throws it over his body. Similarly, a person who is not trained in Krishna consciousness cannot become completely free from the desire for sinful activities. Neither the yoga process, nor philosophical speculations, nor fruitive activities can save one from the seeds of sinful desires. Only by being engaged in devotional service can this be done. There is another evidence.
Okay. So this is the famous conversation at the beginning of the 6th canto. At the beginning of the 6th canto, after Parikshit Maharaj heard about the hellish planets towards the end of the 5th canto, as a Vaishnava, he naturally feels compassion for all those suffering in hell. And so he asks Shukdev Goswami, how can these people be saved from going to hell? Shukdev Goswami, spiritual master, sort of tests Parikshit Maharaj. And so the first answer he gives is based on karma kand. And so he says that by the process of prayaschitta, atonement, one can become free from sinful reactions, free from the punishments. But then Parikshit Maharaj immediately says, but what is the use of such atonement? Because one may be freed from sinful reactions, but the tendency to commit sin remains, or the sinful desire seeds still remain. And so therefore the person will once again commit sinful activities. So the example is given, Kunjera Shauchavat, of the elephant taking bath, and once again throwing dust over his body. So it's just like that. Prabhupada also gives the example of the Christians who go to church on Sundays and confess and give some fine or something like that to get free from the sinful reactions, but then from the next day they immediately start the same sinful activities. So then what's the use of such atonement, prayaschitta? then Shukdev Goswami goes to the next level of Jnanakan, and then he speaks the verse Tapasa Brahmacharyena Yamena Niyamena Va. So then he speaks about tapasya, austerities, celibacy, following various rules and regulations given in the Vedas, and practicing and giving in charity and things like that. But then again, Parikshit Maharaj says, what's the use of that also? Because that also is just like, he gives the example of a forest of bamboo trees. And if the forest of bamboo trees catches fire and all the trees are burnt, but then when the rainy season comes, because the roots are still there, then once again the trees grow. So therefore then Parikshit Maharaj says, what's the use of that also? So basically the sinful desire seeds are not destroyed by any of these processes, even though one could get freed from the reactions. So Prabhupada here gives the example of a person suffering from venereal disease, and then, but because the tendency to commit sin remains there, even though he has to go through the painful treatment, he gets cured, but because the tendency is there, then once again he commits the same thing. So then Shukdev Goswami comes to the final conclusion, and then he says, Kechit kevalaya bhaktya vasudeva parayana agam dhunvanti katsneya niharam iva bhaskara. So he says that only by pure unalloyed devotional service, Kechit kevalaya bhakti, to the Supreme Lord Vasudeva, then aham dhunvanti katsneya. So just like the fog is dissipated by just the first rays of the sun, so similarly, even the tendency to commit sin is destroyed by the practice of devotional service. And so therefore, the ultimate solution to get free from the sinful desire seeds, the bijam, is only the practice of devotional service. And so all the other processes like karma and jnana and yoga, so all these other processes may be successful in destroying the sinful reactions, but the sinful desire seeds remain. Okay, so this is the verse from the 4th canto, which Rupa Goswami quotes. This is the teachings of Sanat Kumar to Prithu Maharaj, which Srila Prabhupada translates in the next paragraph. So somebody read the next paragraph. There's another evidence in the 4th canto.
Mallikarjun Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu. There is another evidence in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 22nd chapter, verse 39, wherein Sanat Kumara says, "My dear king, the false ego of a human being is so strong that it keeps him in material existence as if tied up by a strong rope. Only the devotees can cut off the knot of this strong rope very easily by engaging themselves in Krishna consciousness. Others who are not in Krishna consciousness but are trying to become great mystics or great ritual performers cannot advance like the devotees. Therefore, it is the duty of everyone to engage himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness in order to free from the tight knot of false ego and engagement in material activities."
Okay, we read that. So there's a famous verse, Tat Pada Pankaja Palasha Vilasa Bhaktya. So the verse says that only by taking shelter of the toes of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, when one can be freed from the tight knot of false ego, which is very difficult to cut. So that's the problem with the other process of the jnanis and the yogis. So the false ego remains, and when the false ego remains, then the material desires remain, and there's every possibility of one continuing to maintain material desires and then trying to fulfill them. So therefore, it is only by taking to devotional service that the tight knot of false ego leading to material desires can be cut, and then one can actually destroy the desire to commit sins. And the purport of that verse, Srila Prabhupada describes that why this happens on the path of pure devotional service, because devotional service employs superior desire. Param drishva nivartate, the higher taste. So the jnanis and yogis, they are simply trying to forcibly withdraw the senses from the sense objects. But then that becomes very difficult. So trying to stop the senses from sense gratification is said to be like trying to stop rivers or the waves of the rivers or the ocean. That's practically impossible. And so therefore, the jnanis and yogis, even though they perform so many austerities, control the mind and senses, but still there's every possibility of once again becoming victims of sense gratification. But then on the path of pure devotional service, because of taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord and developing a higher taste, then one is able to actually become detached from material desires. And the purport Srila Prabhupada gives an analogy. He says that, yes, the waves of the rivers are very difficult to stop, but when the river enters into the ocean, then the bigger waves of the ocean, they subdue the waves of the river. So similarly, when one takes to devotional service, there are the bigger waves of a Krishna consciousness or a higher taste in Krishna's service. And so because of those bigger waves, they subdue the waves of sense gratification. And so basically because of the higher taste, so therefore then all the material desires seem to be totally insignificant. That's how a devotee is able to put an end to these material desires. Okay, so that's about the bijam. Now coming to the papam, that is the sinful activities itself. So when one commits the sinful activity, then there are two kinds of sinful reactions. Prarabdham bhavet papam, prarabdham cheti tadvida. So there is prarabdham, which is the immature or the unmanifest reaction. And there's a prarabdham, which is the mature or the manifest reaction. Now, okay, so now go to the beginning of this chapter. So this is page number 4. So under the title, Relief from Material Distress. So somebody could read that.
Indu Mataji.
1 second, Prabhu. I'm not able to find out.
This is in the beginning, Mataji. Relief from material distress, that heading, the paragraph after that. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says.
In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that one should surrender unto him, giving up all other engagements. The Lord also gives his word there that he will protect surrendered souls from the reactions of all sinful activities. Srila Rupa Goswami says that the distresses from sinful activities are due both to the sins themselves and to the sins committed in our past lives. Generally, one commits sinful activities due to ignorance, but ignorance is no excuse for evading the reaction, sinful activities. Sinful activities are of two kinds, those which are mature and those which are not mature. The sinful activities for which we are suffering at the present moment are called mature. The many sinful activities stored within us for which we have not yet suffered are considered immature. For example, a man may have committed criminal acts but not yet been arrested for them. Now, as soon as he is detected, arrest is awaiting him. Similarly, for some of our sinful activities, we are awaiting distresses in the future, and for others which are mature, we are suffering at the present moment. In this way, there is a chain of sinful activities and their concomitant distresses. and the conditioned soul is suffering life after life due to these sins. He is suffering in the present life the results of sinful activities from his past life, and he is meanwhile creating further sufferings for his future life. Mature sinful activities are exhibited if one is suffering from some chronic disease, if one is suffering from some legal implication, if one is born in a low and degraded family, or if one is uneducated or very ugly.
Okay, so this is the basic explanation of aprarabdha and prarabdha, and I think so that's quite simple to understand. So Prabhupada is giving the example of a criminal or a thief who has committed a theft or a crime, but he has not yet been arrested. So as long as he's not arrested, so then he's not getting any suffering, but the suffering is just waiting. And the moment he's arrested, then he gets the suffering. So similarly, we may have committed a certain sinful activity, we may have done something wrong, and we may not get the reaction immediately, but it's just waiting. So as long as it's not manifest, then that's called as aprarabdha. And then when it becomes manifest, then that's called prarabdha, or the mature reaction. And then Prabhupada is giving some examples of prarabdha karma for which one is suffering now. So whether it is a low birth or an ugly body or uneducated or some legal implication and so on and so forth. So whatever suffering. So whatever suffering one is undergoing now, so that's the prarabdha. So sometimes the prarabdha comes quite immediately, sometimes it may take longer time. Just like Prabhupada gives the example, if one, and we definitely all of us have experience of that. So if one overeats or eats something which one should not eat, so then quite immediately, within a few hours, one will experience the indigestion and maybe dysentery, diarrhea, whatever. So immediately one gets the reaction, and then maybe one have to fast for the next 2-3 days. So the reaction is quite immediate. And then there are some diseases which have a longer incubation period. That's called as the incubation period before the symptoms actually become manifest. And so then this incubation period of different diseases is different, and we find that after contracting the disease or contacting the disease, then there could be a gap of sometimes 2-3 days before the symptoms actually become manifest. So till the symptoms actually become manifest, then that's the aprarabdha. When the symptoms actually become manifest, then that's the prarabdha. Sometimes we see in cancer cases, we find that the disease could be there in the body for years, practically years. And there are absolutely no symptoms, And then some little symptom comes up, the person goes for a checkup, and then the cancer could already be very advanced. So many times it happens. So till that time, it's unmanifest. So like that, so that's aprarabdha before the symptoms are manifest, and the prarabdha is when it's already manifest. So now, by the practice of devotional service, the aprarabdha, that means whatever reactions are in the stock waiting to be manifest, they can all be destroyed. So for this, Rupa Goswami is quoting from the 11th canto. So somebody read the next paragraph.
Praful Kumar Prabhu. Praful Kumar.
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu. Please. There are many results of past sinful activities for which we are suffering at the present moment, and we may be suffering in the future due to our present sinful activities. But all of these reactions to sinful deeds can immediately be stopped if we take to Krishna consciousness. As evidence for this, Rupa Goswami quotes from Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 14th chapter, verse 19. This verse is in connection with Lord Krishna's instruction to Uddhava, where he says, "My dear Uddhava, devotional service unto me is just like a blazing fire, which can burn into ashes, unlimited fuel supplied to it." The purport is that as a blazing fire can burn any amount of fuel to ashes, so devotional service to the Lord in Krishna consciousness can burn up all the fuel of sinful activities. For example, in the Gita, Arjuna thought that by fighting was a sinful activity, but Krishna engaged him on the battlefield under his order, and so the fighting became devotional service. Therefore, Arjuna was not subjected to any sinful reaction.
Okay, so this is the reference for how devotional service destroys all sinful reactions, the aprarabdham. So because devotional service is just a blazing fire, which can burn to ashes, unlimited fuel supplied to it. So all the sinful reactions which are waiting to become manifest, all of them can be destroyed by the practice of devotional service. And of course, as the Lord also says, Sarvadharman Patyuja Mamekam Shanuvraja Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Moksha Shami Masucha. So the Lord is ready to nullify all those sinful reactions. And so therefore, a devotee can be saved from all sinful reactions. That's the potency, that's the power of pure devotional service. Okay, we read this. So now, what about prarabdha? Prarabdha is already manifest. Then what happens to prarabdha by the practice of devotional service? So, as an answer to this, Rupa Goswami quotes this verse from the third canto of the Bhagavatam, which Mother Devotee is speaking to Lord Kapila. After she heard about the glories of devotional service from Lord Kapila, then Mother Devotee is praising the potency of pure devotional service. So the verse is Yan Namadheya Shravananu Kirtanat Yat Pravanat Yat Smaranat Api Kvachit Shwadopi Sadhya Savanaya Kalpate Kuta Punaste Bhagavan Nudarshana. Even a person born in a family of dog eaters immediately becomes eligible to perform Vedic sacrifices if he once utters the holy name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or chants about him, hears about his pastimes, offers him obeisances, or even remembers him. So Prabhupada is quoting this in the next paragraph. So now somebody read the next paragraph. Srila Rupa Goswami quotes.
Raghavendra Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Srila Rupa Goswami quotes another verse from the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 33rd chapter, verse 6, in which Devotee addresses her son Kapiladeva and says, "My dear Lord, there are 9 different kinds of devotional service, beginning from hearing and chanting. Anyone who hears about your pastimes and who chants your glories, who offers you obeisances, who thinks of you, and in this way executes any of the 9 kinds of devotional service, even if he is born in a family of dog eaters, the lowest grade of mankind, becomes immediately qualified to perform sacrifices. As such, how is it possible that anyone actually engaged in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness has not become purified? It is not possible. One who is engaged in Krishna consciousness and devotional service has, without doubt, become freed from all contaminations of material sinful activities. Devotional service, therefore, has the power to actually nullify all kinds of reactions to sinful deeds. A devotee is nevertheless always alert not to commit any sinful activities. This is his specific qualification as a devotee. Thus, Srimad Bhagavatam states that by performing devotional service, a person who has born even in a family of dog eaters may become eligible to take part in the performance of the ritualistic ceremonies recommended in the Vedas. It is implicit in the statement that a person born into a family of dog eaters is generally not fit for performing yajna or sacrifice. The priestly caste in charge of performing these ritualistic ceremonies recommended in the Vedas is called the Brahmana Order. Unless one is a Brahmana, he cannot perform these ceremonies. A person is born in a Brahmana family or in a family of dog eaters due to his past activities. If a person is born in a family of dog eaters, it means that his past activities were all sinful. But if even such a person takes to the path of devotional service and begins to chant the holy names of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna
Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare,
Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, he is at once fit to perform the ritualistic ceremonies. This means that his sinful reactions have immediately become neutralized.
Okay. So here, this is an example of prarabdha karma. So by his prarabdha karma, the person is already born in the family of dog eaters. That cannot be changed. He is already born. The birth has taken place, birth to specific parents. So that cannot be changed. But by practicing devotional service, by chanting the holy names and hearing about the Lord and offering obeisances, remembering the Lord, then even such a Shwapacha, somebody born in a family of dog eaters, becomes eligible to perform Vedic sacrifices. He becomes qualified. So that's how the prarabdha may not totally change, but even the prarabdha becomes modified by the practice of devotional service. And of course, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita and Mahaprabhu's pastimes, the famous example is that of Haridas Thakur. So Haridas Thakur was also born in a Mlecha family. He was, but then by his incessant chanting of the holy names, Advaita Acharya, the greatest of the Brahmanas, during the Shraddha ceremony, he offered the first Shraddha Patra to Haridas Thakur. And Haridas Thakur himself was surprised. He said, I'm not a Brahmana. There were so many other qualified Brahmanas. So Haridas Thakur asked, why are you offering this to me? So Advaita Acharya, he replied, he said, by offering you the Shraddha Patra, I am feeding hundreds and thousands of Brahmanas. So that's how even the prarabdha can be modified by the practice of devotional service. Just like Srila Prabhupada also, he said that how the hippies, before they came to devotional service, then they were so unclean and dirty, not having taken bath and long hair and all that. But then after they came to devotional service and they shaved up and started leading clean lives, and Prabhupada said they looked like Vaikuntha men. So even from an external viewpoint, there could be some modification, some change in one's physical features by the practice of devotional service. Okay, somebody read this from the screen.
Parvatama Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes, ma'am.
Papam. Sinful acts cause reactions in the form of unfavorable circumstances, such as low birth, acquisition of bad qualities, and suffering. These are all removed by bhakti. In some cases, the circumstances cannot be removed immediately. Such a case is one's birth. By performing bhakti, one cannot change one's birth from particular parents within this lifetime. Some circumstances, such as sickness, can be destroyed, as well as that the bad qualities and the suffering caused by bad qualities or circumstances are destroyed by bhakti. The dog eater who becomes a devotee cannot remove his birth, and certain incidents ensuing from it, such as not being educated in the Vedas. But he can remove the bad qualities and the suffering. The changing of birth would have to wait until next lifetime.
Okay, so the birth cannot be changed, but then the bad qualities and the suffering and qualification to perform yajnas and these things can be changed by the practice of devotional service. So that's how the prarabdha may not be totally eradicated, but at least to some degree the prarabdha can be modified by the practice of devotional service. And of course, this point we'll discuss later, but then the prarabdha or the suffering is also modified by the attitude of the devotee towards that suffering condition because of a proper philosophical understanding. So in that sense also the prarabdha gets modified. Okay, we read this. Okay, so this is a verse quoted from the Padma Puran. Aprarabdha phalam papam kutam bijan phalomukam krameneva praliyeta Vishnu bhakti ratatmana. Prabhupada quotes it in the Bhagavad Gita 9.2 purports. There are 4 kinds of effects due to sinful activities, which are listed as follows: the effect which is not yet fructified, the effect which is lying as a seed, the effect which is already mature, and the effect which is almost mature. So the effect which is not yet fructified, that is called kutam. We'll come to that discussion now. And the effect which is lying as seed is bijam. The effect which is already mature, that is prarabdha. And the effect which is almost mature is aprarabdha. So krameneva, gradually, all of these are destroyed by Vishnu Bhakti Pratatmana. So now coming to this discussion of kutam. So there's papam, sinful action. There are two. There's aprarabdha first. And the aprarabdha has 2 effects. One is the prarabdha, which is the direct physical or emotional suffering. And the second effect is the kutam, indirect suffering by increased sinful proclivity. So just to put it in another way. So there's papam, the sinful activity. So there's aprarabdha, which is the unmanifest reaction, which has 2 effects. One is the prarabdha, which is the manifest reaction, also called phalonmukam. And the other effect is the kutam, or the sinful propensity. So every time one commits a sinful activity, not only does one get the reaction to the sinful activity, but the tendency to commit sin, or the sinful propensity, also increases. And then because the sinful propensity increases, then once again, there is the desire to commit the same sinful activity. And then once again, there is the papa. So that's how every time one commits a sinful activity, the tendency to commit sin increases. And so therefore, one should not think that, okay, I have some material desire, I'll just fulfill it and it'll be finished. No. Rather, every time one tries to satisfy a material desire, the tendency to commit the same wrong activity, the tendency to fulfill the material desires keeps on increasing. And so therefore, in the 3rd chapter of the Gita, the Lord explains lust. When he's speaking about the qualities of lust, he says that it is just like a blazing fire. Analena. So it's just like a blazing fire. So if one puts fuel to the fire is never going to subside. It's only going to increase. So similarly, every time one tries to fulfill material desires, it's just like putting fuel in the fire. And so then the fire grows bigger and bigger. The material desires grow bigger and bigger. And so therefore, that is no way of trying to curb the material desires. Okay, so the same thing put in another way. So then the cycle continues. Okay, so every time one commits a sinful activity, then one gets the reaction, but at the same time sinful tendency increases, then again the same sinful activity. And that's how the cycle of sin continues. But then it's only by the practice of devotional service that all parts of this sinful cycle or the cycle of sin can be destroyed. So in that connection, we'll just read the next two paragraphs from Prabhupada's book. So Prabhupada quotes the same verse. It is stated in the Padma Puran. Somebody can read that. 2 paragraphs.
Pradeep Prabhu.
It is stated in the Padma Purana that there are 4 kinds of effects due to sinful activities, which are listed as follows. The effect which is not yet fructified, 2, the effect which is lying as seed, 3, the effect which is already mature, and the effect which is almost mature. It is also stated that all these 4 effects become immediately vanquished for those who surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, and become engaged in his devotional service in full Krishna consciousness. Those effects described as almost mature refer to the distress from which one is suffering at present, and the effects lying as seed are in the core of the heart, where there is a certain stock of sinful desires which are like seeds. The Sanskrit word kutam means that they are almost ready to produce the seed or the effect of the seed. An immature effect refers to the case where the seedling has not begun. From this statement of Padma Purana, it is understood that material contamination is very subtle. Its beginning, its fruition and results, and how one suffers such results in the form of distress are part of a great chain. When one catches some disease, it is often very difficult to ascertain the cause of the disease, where it is originated and how it is maturing. The suffering of a disease, however, does not appear all of a sudden. It actually takes time. And as in the medical field, for precaution's sake, the doctor injects a vaccination to prevent the growing of contamination. The practical injection to stop all the fructifications of the seeds of our sinful activities is simply his engagement in Krishna consciousness.
Okay, fine. So as we were discussing, that this all is a great chain. And when one is experiencing the prarabdha, then exactly when the sinful activity took place, what was that sinful activity for which we are suffering right now? Very difficult to ascertain. It's all very complicated, and we just don't have any idea as to what is the original cause of the suffering. So which reaction we are suffering to which sinful activity, when was the sinful activity? We just cannot understand all these things. And so therefore, the best thing is to focus on the solution, and that is devotional service by which this entire chain can be terminated. In fact, it's the only way this chain can be terminated. Okay, this is the same thing. Okay, so now we are coming to another discussion in connection to this Kleshagni. So now we are coming specifically to devotees. So we have been discussing how by practice of devotional service, all the stages of the cycle of sin are terminated. So just to give a few quotes. So it says simply by chanting the holy name of Krishna once, a person is relieved from all reactions of sinful life. Or as we chant every morning, when a person circumambulates Srimad Tulsi Devi, all the sins he may have committed are destroyed at every step, even the sin of killing a Brahmana. At the same time, in the Nectar of Devotion in chapter 10, it said that a devotee should not expect immediate relief from the reactions of his past misdeeds. A devotee who is not perfectly freed from the resultant action should therefore continue to act in Krishna consciousness seriously, even though there may be so many impediments. And Krishna also says, Sarvadharma Paritijya, Aham Tuam Sarva Papebhyo. So basically the question is that if there are all these statements talking about how devotional service nullifies all sinful reactions, then the question is, why do devotees suffer? And so So we just go through a short discussion now on why do devotees suffer. We'll discuss the topic more elaborately when we come to the 10th chapter. But since we are discussing the topic of Kleshagni, so we thought of just discussing in brief on the topic as to why devotees suffer if devotional service is so potent that all sinful reactions are supposed to be destroyed. So here, this is, okay. Srila Prabhupada has extended Krishna's statement in the Bhagavad Gita to the spiritual master. So Krishna says, Am Tvam Sarvapabhebhyo, and that can be extended to the spiritual master, who's Krishna's representative, that if you surrender to the spiritual master at the time of initiation, you become free from all sinful reactions. Prabhupada does say that in his lectures, that at the time of initiation, the account becomes zero. Prabhupada says this in his lectures. The account becomes zero. Everything is nullified. So, are we actually free from all sinful reactions immediately when we surrender? Or do we gradually become free? So what exactly takes place? So Giriraj Maharaj says that Srila Prabhupada has given some other hints which would help us resolve this question. He has said that when the devotee surrenders to Krishna, Krishna will take charge of the devotee's sinful reactions and use the devotee's sinful reactions for the best benefit of the devotee. Okay, so that's the understanding that yes, when the devotee fully surrenders, then yes, all the sinful reactions are destroyed. But then, so we will come to that discussion a little later. But the fact is that when the devotee's sinful tendencies are not completely destroyed, the propensity to enjoy material sense gratification is not completely destroyed. Once again, he commits some sinful activities, some wrong activities. Then Krishna can use those same sinful reactions for the best benefit of the devotee. So that means, basically, yes, Krishna nullifies the sinful reactions, or to be more precise, he takes charge of the sinful reactions. And then he can use the sinful reactions. So that means he can reduce the sinful reaction, he can increase them, he can modify them, he can play around with them because now it's fully in Krishna's hands. Okay, so we will read some other quotes. And so in that connection, there is the famous verse, Tatenukam Bam Susumikshamano Bunjane Vatma Pritam Vipakam Ridva Vapavir Vidana Namaste Jivita Yamukti Padesita. My Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds, and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. So, when the devotee goes through suffering conditions, then he accepts that, yes, this is due to my past sinful activities, and so therefore he actually thinks, as Prabhupada writes in other purports, that the devotee actually thinks that I was supposed to suffer much more, but then Krishna has very mercifully reduced the sinful reactions and given me only a token punishment. And so therefore, he thanks the Lord, Ridvag Vapavir Vidadan Namaste. And then he continues on in his practice of devotional service. Okay, so this is a purport that Srila Prabhupada gives. Somebody read.
Saurabh Sharma, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji, I'll read.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Because in his mind, a devotee may still maintain the remnants of his previous sinful mentality, the Lord removes the last vestiges of the enjoying spirit by giving his devotee punishments that may sometimes resemble sinful reactions. Although a devotee has surrendered to the Lord's devotional service, until he is completely perfect in Krishna consciousness, he may maintain a slight inclination to enjoy the false happiness of this world. The Lord therefore creates a particular situation to eradicate this remaining enjoying spirit. This unhappiness suffered by a sincere devotee is not technically a karmic reaction. It is rather the Lord's special mercy for inducing his devotee to completely let go of the material world and return home back to Godhead.
Okay, so when there are still the vestiges or the remnants of the enjoying mentality, then Krishna, he thinks, now why is this devotee still maintaining this enjoying mentality? And so then Krishna makes plans to destroy that enjoying mentality. And so therefore he puts the devotee into suffering conditions. So this is not technically a karmic reaction, means it's not given by the laws of material nature, but this is given directly by Krishna. It's the Lord's special mercy. So it may appear as if it's a karmic reaction. It may appear as if the devotee is also going through suffering like any other ordinary person. He's also going through disease and other suffering conditions, but it is not a karmic reaction, but this is directly given by Krishna for a specific reason, which only Krishna knows. And so in that connection, this verse can be quoted. And that is Shri Bhagavan Vacha Yasyam Anugranami Harisheta Dhanam Shanai Tato Dhanam Tyajantyasya Swajana Dukkha Dukkhitham. So this is told by the Supreme Lord himself to Yudhishthira Maharaj, if I'm not mistaken. So the personality of Godhead said, if I especially favor someone, I gradually deprive him of his wealth. Then the relatives and friends of such a poverty-stricken man abandon him. And in this way, he suffers one distress after another. So this is Anugrinami. This is special mercy. And therefore, it's called Hari. Hari means one who takes away. So he takes away all the wealth so that the devotee has no other shelter save and except the Lord. And so the devotee may have some material attachments to family members, relatives, wealth, and so on and so forth. So then if the Lord wants to cut off all those material attachments, then the Lord may just take away the wealth and then finish off all the attachments. Like in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, we read about the Avanti Brahmana. So who lost all his wealth, and then so all the friends and relatives abandoned him, and then he surrendered to the Supreme Lord. Just like Srila Prabhupada, he also says that when his business collapsed, his pharmacy business, then he remembered this verse, Yasyam Manugrinami Harisheta. So he understood that as the Lord's plan so that he could give up all these material attachments. So that's one reason why the Lord puts the devotees in suffering. Basically to destroy the enjoying mentality and material attachments. So this is from the Madhuri Kadambini by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So he says, another place the Lord says, Nirdhanatva Maharogo Mad Anugraha Lakshanam. The awesome affliction known as poverty is in fact a sign of mercy. The truth is that the Supreme Lord, the greatest benefactor of his devotees, purposely inflicts suffering on his devotees just to increase their humility and yearning for him. And thus the devotees' woes are not because of fruitive reactions, nor are they reactions of prarabdha sins. Okay, similar point. So the Lord purposefully does that. For whatever reason, maybe the devotee is proud or material attachments. So the Lord just wants to cut off all that, which the Lord does in so many places. In the Bhagavatam also we read how the Lord humbles Indra when he became proud of his position. He also humbled Brahma. So like that, so the Lord, out of his special mercy, then he performs all these activities and inflicts pain and suffering on the devotees to increase their humility and increase their yearning, their longing to achieve the Supreme Lord. Okay, now another reason for the devotee's suffering is aparadhs, especially nama aparadh. So this also from the Madhuri Kadambini, where Vishwanath Chakravarti is quoting from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and it says, Kete aparadha Vipendra namno bhagavata kritaha vinignanti nrinam krityam prakritim yanayantihi. Okay, so the Brahmana's offenses against the holy name result in a person losing all piety, and for him the mundane manifests in transcendental objects. So this is another important reason why devotees undergo suffering, and that is aparadhs, especially namaparad. And so when one commits namaparad, then the result is that one loses the mercy of the holy name, one loses the mercy of the Lord, and as a result, he loses taste for everything that is transcendental. And everything that is transcendental appears to be mundane. Okay, so that's further elaborated here. Somebody could read this.
Sakya Prem Prabhuji.
What is the destructive nature of these offenses against the holy name? Hearing and chanting the Lord's holy name, qualities, and so on, bestows prema. Visiting places of pilgrimage, connected with the Lord's pastimes, reward perfection, and regularly honoring the Lord's prasadam subdues the senses. Yet, Namaparada is so devastating that, although transcendental and completely spiritual, these activities appear mundane. How serious are these offenses that can cause such a phenomenon?
Okay, so this is what happens. When one commits offenses, then the Lord's holy name, qualities, visiting place of pilgrimage, Mahaprasad, everything appears to be mundane. So obviously when all these things appear to be mundane, then one loses taste. So if one loses taste, obviously then one will stop performing these activities, one stop performing spiritual activities, then there is no other option but material activities. So basically the devotee once again takes to material life, and material life means again suffering. So this is the second important reason why devotees suffer, and that is aparadhs, offenses. Okay, somebody read this.
Vagisha Mataji. We can't hear you, Mataji.
Remain firmly. Okay. Now is it okay, Prabhu, now?
Not clear.
Hare,
Maybe somebody else can read.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes,
Yeah,
Mataji.
Oh, is it?
Yes,
read
clear,
from the
clear now, Mataji.
Okay. I'll read, Prabhu. It's okay. So is it clear now?
Yes, yes, clear now, Mataji.
One may say that the offender against the holy name is condemned to develop aversion to God, making it impossible for him to remain firmly fixed in devotional service under the guidance of his guru. This is certainly true. It is also true that just as very sick patient loses his appetite, a grievous offender to the holy name loses his attachment for hearing, chanting, and other devotional activities. However, just as the patient's sickness abates after some time, his appetite gradually returning, so also when the offender's essential cravings decrease after a long period of sense enjoyment, his interest in devotional service is recurrent.
Okay, so that's what happens, that one develops aversion to the Lord, His holy name, and all devotional activities. And so therefore loses attachment for hearing, chanting, then he gives them up and takes to material life. And so then after a long period, we don't know how long that period may be, when somehow he atones or somehow he gets reactions for his offenses, and then that reaction is done. Then once again, if that offense has been sufficiently atoned, then once again the interest in devotional service can be rekindled. Okay, so we already read this. Okay, fine. So that's our discussion on Kleshagni basically. So basically, as far as suffering in the life of, and we will, as I said, we'll be discussing this topic a little more in detail. So when we reach to the 10th chapter, but then here we just give a brief understanding as to why devotees suffer, in spite of understanding that devotional service nullifies all aspects of the cycle of sin. And in spite of that, why do devotees suffer? So here we have seen essentially two reasons. One is if the sinful tendencies or the tendency to gratify one's senses still remains, then Krishna may put the devotee in suffering to destroy that. And the second reason is offenses, aparadhas, especially namaparadzs. The third reason, which is also told, is it could be to glorify devotees and to glorify the process of devotional service, that in spite of the suffering conditions, the devotee continues on in his practice of devotional service. So it could also be to glorify the devotees, as we see in the case of devotees like Pandavas. Okay, fine. So that's our discussion on Kleshagni. So if there are any questions, you could ask.
There are 4 questions, Guruji. Starting with Ravi Shankar Guruji, asked at 8 a.m.
Okay. How to understand once a person chants Hare Krishna? This means that his reactions have immediately become neutralized. Once a person gets free from all sinful reactions, why again Jiva indulges sinful activity? Okay, the first point is that it's not that once a person chants Hare Krishna, his reactions become neutralized, but then when he surrenders completely. So when he surrenders completely, then yes, all sinful reactions are neutralized. So of course, Prabhupada does say at the time of the formal initiation, whatever is the previous account is neutralized. But the problem is that the sinful tendencies may still be there. And so therefore, if the sinful tendencies are still there, then yes, again he commits sinful activities and then he has to face reactions. Okay? How we should understand when devotee goes through suffering after chanting many years. That's what we discussed. Sinful tendencies, aparadhas, so these are the causes. Or very advanced devotees, maybe the Lord wants to glorify them. Okay, so that's the next question. Why are acharyas sometimes suffered? So of course, very difficult for us to understand what's the Lord's plan. We have absolutely no clue as to what's the Lord's plan and why he's doing something. But we can, for some very exalted devotees, we can think that, well, the Lord wants to show the glory of his pure devotees and the glory of devotional service, that in spite of all types of suffering, the devotee's consciousness and his determination to practice devotional service always remains. 3 stages, Nama Parad, Nama Ba, Shuddhanam. Why it is devastated when it is first? Say you now, Prabhupada, why it is devastating? Well, he's committing aparadh, so therefore there has to be reaction for that.
So Prabhuji, was that when we are neophyte devotees, we have not started taking holy names. And when we start taking holy names, it's a step forward. So still it's bad, or it's better than actually I was not even tasting the holy name before. So it's a natural progression. So in that sense, we are committing offense or we are progressing.
See, when one is not chanting at all, then one is just in material life, and material life means then one is going to get all the reactions to all one's previous karmas and sinful activities. So that's material life. Now we begin chanting, then we are beginning to get out of material life, and so we are taking the medicine for the disease. So now, so as one is taking the medicine for the disease, so just like sometimes if, so the doctor gives some instructions. So you take this medicine, but at the same time, don't eat this, eat only this. So instructions are given. So, but if one doesn't follow the instructions, so sometimes medicines have side effects, or there could be some reactions because we're not following instructions. But if one follows the instructions, then yes, the medicine will have effect, proper effect. So similarly, the holy name is powerful. And also the Shastri is giving the list of offenses, what to do, what not to do, everything is there. Now, in spite of that, if one is not following the instructions, then obviously there has to be some reaction. But if one is not taking the holy name at all, then there is no scope only of coming out of the disease condition. So yes, one has to take the medicine, but then take the medicine according to instructions. One doesn't follow the instructions, then one gets reaction. Is it?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Prabhu, just one point. Can we understand it like this, Prabhu? The sixth canto of Bhagavatam, it talks about this Helanam, Hashya, and all those things. That is Namaparad stage, and Namaparad stage also has some benefits, but we don't have any in the beginning stage. We don't have any bhakti only to be destroyed. So if there is bhakti, if in the advanced stages, if we have bhakti, then it gets destroyed. But in the beginning stages, there is no bhakti only to get destroyed. So we will get some benefit even by Namaparad. Can we say like that too?
Benefit is always there. The benefit of chanting is always there. And as Srila Prabhupada explains in his lectures, so even if one is on the Namaprad stage, but what is the solution for that? The solution is to continue chanting. If one gives up the chanting only because if one thinks, oh, anyway, I'm committing offenses and offenses will have reactions, so better give up the chanting. So it's just like saying that, okay, I won't take the medicine only. So that's foolishness. So now because of material conditionings, past habits or whatever, so then there is a tendency to commit aparadhs. One should be careful, but still some aparadhs may take place, then one has to atone for them, and the Shastra is giving how to atone for them. So then one has to go through the whole process. But of course, the chanting will definitely have benefit. There's no doubt about that. The benefit will always be there. But then if one commits some aparadhs, then obviously some reaction may be there. But then what is the solution? The solution is to continue chanting. There is no other solution. So one has to just go through the whole process. So it's unavoidable. So if one wants to progress on the spiritual path, then yes, one has to go through it. One has to try one's best to avoid the offenses. But due to past conditionings, if the offenses do take place, then okay, some reaction will be there, then atone, and then so one has to go through it. There's no way out.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Prabhuji. There was another question there, Prabhuji, below that. I think
Okay, if offenses are committed, will the devotional punya destroyed or will be?
No, Prabhuji, before that, I had another question. That how devotees should react to the suffering. Sometimes it's a normal reaction or not react at all, or how they should, the behavior should be, because it's not easy.
So yeah, so of course we will discuss this once again when we come to the 10th chapter, how the devotee should react. But then the basic reaction is, as we go to the verse Tatyanukampa. So then, so basically one has to understand that yes, I'm simply getting a reaction to my misdeeds, so therefore I should tolerate. And then if one can figure out what's the cause, then try to atone. If it's a Vaishnava prad or something like that, then try to atone. Try to beg forgiveness and all that. So, but then in all cases, whether one understands the cause, one doesn't understand the cause, in all cases, one has to, one thing is definite, if I'm suffering, then it is due to some reaction. And so therefore, the Bhagavatam is saying one should be thankful to the Lord, that the Lord has actually reduced the reaction. He has given only token punishment. And so therefore, the devotee thanks the Lord, and then he tolerates the suffering, and then he intensifies his devotional service. So that's how a devotee reacts. All right?
Thank you, Prabhuji.
If offenses are committed, will the devotional punya destroyed or regain the devotional punya? So one thing is definite, whatever devotional service has been performed, that's never destroyed. Only it's covered. I think so. Maybe in one of the previous classes I did speak about this example which Kadamkan Maharaj gives, and that is the frozen account, the frozen bank account. So the money is there, but the person can't access it. So similarly, whatever devotional service has been performed, that's always there. That's the meaning of Swalpam Pisa Dharmas, or that was Neha Bikramana Shastri Pratyavayana. So it's never destroyed. It will always be there, but because of the offense, then the person can't access. And so therefore he loses the taste. And so then when the offense is rectified, atoned for, then once again the taste will come. And then once again he can continue.
Prabhuji, this is this is a good revelation for me this time. Like generally we used to quote this mad elephant offense, and which destroys the field of bhakti karke. So always I had this impression ki, like if we commit offense, our bhakti will be destroyed. This frozen account wala, like it is the new revelation. Can you like
yes,
give
that's
a little more?
otherwise what's the meaning of that verse then? Neha Bikramana.
Okay.
Where Krishna is telling that whatever devotional service one has performed is never destroyed. So, or as Prabhupada writes in purport, 1% perform, one continues to. So that point is very clear. So that whatever devotional service one performs always remains, but then the person can't access it. He loses the taste. So why it is said that, of course, we'll be discussing this topic also in our further discussions about the mad elephant offense and all that. But then the essential point is that why it is said that it's destroyed, because it's as good as destroyed, because he has no access. And so he loses taste. And so he cannot continue devotional service. So therefore, it's as good as destroyed. But then it's not totally destroyed in the sense that whatever devotional service has been performed, it's not destroyed. But then later he can access it.
Thanks a lot, Poo. This is a very, very hope-giving explanation, Poo.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, everything is there in the scripture. And that's what even those quotes of Vishwanath Thakur we read from Madhuri Kadambini, he's also explained the same thing, isn't it?
Yes, Poo. That's when I got this doubt, actually. So,
and so therefore, we And therefore, then there is a meaning to all the atonement and forgiveness and begging for forgiveness. All that has meaning only because of this reason. So when Gopal Chapal, who offended Srivas Thakur, then he got leprosy, and then later on, after Mahaprabhu took sannyas, then he begs for forgiveness from Mahaprabhu, and Mahaprabhu is so angry. He says, "Well, this is only the beginning of suffering. How will you tolerate the suffering in hell?" But then he pleads, and then finally Mahaprabhu says, "You beg forgiveness from Srivas Thakur. If he forgives, then you'll be forgiven." So then all this has no meaning if everything is lost. All this is meaning only because, yes, then whatever devotional service has been performed, then that's, one can access that and continue.
Thanks, Prabhu.
Post-initiation for the sinful reaction of the disciple, does spiritual master bear the brunt? Yes. And we will discuss this point in the 5th chapter. When we come to the 5th chapter, we'll discuss this point. But the answer to the question is yes. And in one sense, that's the reason why the spiritual master suffers, because then the disciples get indication that they are supposed to improve. And we'll discuss that later. Is there any sinful reaction for incessant thoughts coming in the mind? Of course, Kali Yuga, there's that concession. Okay, if there are thoughts in the mind, then one doesn't get reaction for offenses or sins committed in the mind. But then still one has to be careful because they may manifest. Yes, so these thoughts could be due to past life, due to past life, and again, this is quite an elaborate topic, which Srila Prabhupada does explain in the 4th canto purports, that sometimes desires could be fulfilled just in the mind, and that's how they are nullified and all that. So in any case, but for sinful activities or sinful things in the mind, one doesn't get a reaction, but still one has to be careful that they don't become manifest.
Prabhuji, I have a doubt over there. If they continue thinking those things, it could also lead to the propensity becoming even stronger, right? If
possible, yes, that's also possible. So if one keeps on thinking about the wrong things, they also get reinforced in the mind. I think so. We all have experienced. You keep thinking about a person's faults, for example. If they keep thinking about the person's faults all the time, then it becomes more and more reinforced, and then ultimately you'll speak it out. So yes, one has to be careful.
Thank you.
How can we understand that very senior devotees are getting sufferings? How can we understand? What do you mean by how can we understand? It becomes obvious, isn't it?
Means how can we, sorry, Hare Krishna Prabhu, sorry, how can we see when they are so exalted and they are seniors and they are giving their whole
so
life?
That point I already said that, isn't it? So basically it could be two reasons. One is the devotees, I mean the disciples are not following. That could be one reason. And the second reason is maybe Krishna just wants to glorify what. So it's very difficult to pinpointedly give a reason, but on the basis of Shastra, we can give these two reasons as to why exalted devotees may suffer.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Chanting has offense if we are inattentive. When that pray for reading. No, there also deity worship, seva prads. We'll be discussing seva prads. Offenses can always be committed, but nama prads are more dangerous. We'll discuss this point. The 8th chapter is entirely dealing about offenses, so we'll discuss about offenses that time. Sachimata Advaitacharya. So Mahaprabhu wanted to show that how even if somebody as exalted as Sachimata offends a great devotee like Advaita Acharya, still one has to face some reaction. So these are very exalted personalities, and Mahaprabhu wants to show a specific example, and so we leave it at that. As far as we are concerned, this is what the Shastra says. You can read it in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, that especially in Kali Yuga, offenses in mind are not counted. But then, as we already discussed, that we should still be careful, because from the mind they can become manifest. Does having anger, hate, or aversion in mind towards any devotee constitute Vaishnava Prad? Yes. Again, we'll come to that discussion later on about Vaishnava Prad. But yes, having anger, hate, aversion, again, as long as not manifest, it's okay, but then there's every possibility that it can become manifest. But then it's said that even not feeling happy on seeing a Vaishnava, rather feeling anger and hate, also constitutes an offense. But then especially if it's manifest. How to understand sins committed by senior devotees? Then you have to revise the topic from the 9th chapter, Api Chet Suduracharo Bhajate Imam Ananya Bhak. We had a whole discussion on that in the 9th chapter. So that's how. All right.
Yes, Prabhuji. So far only these questions. One more is there, Prabhuji.
Tendency, samskar, vasana, thought process, all the same or different? Samskar and vasana is the same. All is referring to impressions. Impressions within the mind. Impressions could lead to tendencies. Tendencies are a little more gross. Otherwise, all of them are on the subtle platform. So quite similar, quite similar. But tendency may be a little more gross. Sanskar and vasanas could be more deep-rooted and subtle. Okay? Fine. Okay, so if there are no more questions, we hardly have 5 minutes remaining. So if there's nothing more, we'll just close for today.
Okay, Prabhuji.
All right. So remaining characteristics we will cover tomorrow.
All right.
Okay.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Thank you all very much for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Bhakti Samrita Sindhu ki jai, Shri Rupa Goswami.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavat pranam, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavat pranam.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat pranam.
Dandavat pranam, Prabhu.